Hi, Shobit. Let's discuss about the Anthos config. First of all, let's discuss about the Anthos. Here, we will let's see how to install the Anthos cluster over the on-prem environment. And Anthos is providing the three different types of utility. And first utility is Anthos Service Mesh. Normally in open market, we have a ISTIO available. Google use this ISTIO and provide the support. And for that particular product, Google named as Anthos Service Mesh. This is the first
Okay.
product which is provided under the Anthos. This is taking care all the networking flow into the cluster. And the another component is ACM, Anthos Config Management. And the third component is M4A,
Okay.
Migrate
Could you
for
explore
Anthos, stands for Migrate for Anthos. Okay.
that? Okay.
Today we will see how to install the cluster over the on-prem environment, and then we have to connect that particular cluster over the GCP. After that, we will manage our cluster from the GCP.
Okay. So
Okay.
GCP is necessary here.
Yeah, GCP is necessary.
Okay.
Normally, if we are using any operating system, enterprise operating system, we have to register that particular operating system over the vendor side. Here, this is the product
Mhm.
which is provided by the Google. If we are using Anthos in on-prem environment, we have to register the Anthos over the GCP. And GCP, it's a product from the Google side. That's why we need a connectivity between on-prem to GCP, or we have to register Anthos over the GCP so that Google will provide the support in the future if any requirements come.
Okay.
Okay. Normally, in physical data center or over the public cloud, we are using container over the hardware. Hardware can be managed by users or by engineer in on-prem environment, or can be managed by a public cloud provider over the public cloud. Give me a second here. Over the hardware, we are using the containers, and containers we are using the containers, and traffic flow between the containers is provided by the ISTIO, which is service mesh.
Mhm.
Let me describe it again. Normally, we have two different types of operating systems are available, or application as well. One is the monolithic and another one is microservices or microlithic.
Mhm.
Windows come under the monolithic and Linux come under the microlithic, or we can say the microservices come under over the Linux platform. In monolithic platform, every service is created under the same bundle and no need to take care about the connectivity. But if we are talking about the microservices,
Mhm.
microservices are running over the different operating systems or over the different containers. Here we are talking about the microservices, and Anthos is a product from the microservices. That's why we will consider our application is running over the container. The function A is my application A, and the function B is my application B, which both applications are running over the different containers. And containers normally in Kubernetes environment, containers are running over the multiple ports. And if we write a code and we mention that need to update all the data which captured by the survey say, and need to write over the database, which is running under the service B. In that case, the traffic flow, let me draw it. Suppose function A is my web application and function B is my database, then application fetch the data and write over the database. In that particular scenario, we need a network connectivity. If we are using these types of approach over the Kubernetes without ISTIO, then the traffic will move from here, from service A to service B without any encryption. If we will use the ISTIO, we don't have to define anything over the YAML or over the application code related to the traffic. We just have to define that. Need to update the records over the service B, and everything will be taken care by the ISTIO. ISTIO will ISTIO will transfer the traffic from service A to service B in encrypted format. We will discuss in brief once we will take a session over the ISTIO. Here, this is the higher level diagram of ISTIO. In business logic, this is the business logic. Suppose this is your application A YAML, okay, and this is your application B YAML. Is it clear, Shobit?
Yes. Yeah, it is.
Okay. Here, normally we are just writing the application like this is a deployment, and we have a number of options available under the deployment. We are not writing any code related to the network. Am I right?
Yes.
We have to follow the same approach. We just have to write the YAML, and only this business logic part. Suppose this is our YAML related to the service A, and over the right side, this is the YAML related to the service B.
Okay.
Previously, our traffic are directly flow from service A to service B without any encryption or without anything.
Okay.
But
Yes.
but sometime we have to require that how much time is taken care by the traffic, how much time is taken care to flow the traffic from service A to service B. And if we are using a Kubernetes, we don't have any tools available apart from ISTIO who can provide these types of facility. So in ISTIO, first of all, we are using APIs, and APIs are just a call which make a connectivity from service A to service B,
Mm-hmm.
and that particular connectivity happen on the basis of MTLS, mutual TLS. Okay, and this will take care about the authentication and authorization. We have so many containers are running in the environment, but authentication and authorization only provided to the required traffic, uh, which define over the business logic. Okay, it will not go towards the service C and service D. If we define that over the service A, if we define that traffic will flow from service A to service B, then it will only authenticate and authorize over the service B traffic.
Okay.
Okay, this is taken care by the service parameter under the ISTIO. Also, we have a network resiliency, which will provide the feature related to the latency, fault tolerance, and circuit breaking. Also, we have observability features available under the ISTIO, which will provide the logging metrics through which we can capture how much time is taken care by the network to flow from service A to service B, and we have all logs available. Also, we have a policy types of features available under the ISTIO. and every traffic follow on the basis of IDs. It will create a ID, and that particular ID, suppose if ID is A, ID is 1, here ID is 2, then the traffic flow on the basis of ID 1 to ID 2. We will discuss later here. Now we will discuss about the high level architect of Anthos.
Mm-hmm.
Let me present the slide with you. In normal scenario, if we're talking about the Kubernetes, we have a environment divided into the two parts. One is a control plane, and another component is are the workers. Either we have a single control plane, or we have a multiple control planes available in the environment, and we have a so many worker nodes available, right? Hello.
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, it is right.
yeah, yeah. First of all, let me show you how Google are providing the environment related to the GKE, Google Kubernetes Engine.
Okay.
Suppose we created one organization, and over the organization we created one project, and under that particular project we created one Google Kubernetes Engine cluster, and in that particular cluster we can control only worker nodes, and compute nodes are managed by the Google. Here, this is the higher level diagram related to this. Suppose this is our GKE cluster, and under this cluster, we have a multiple worker nodes available.
Okay.
Okay, these are the worker nodes only,
Mm-hmm.
and only this part we can manage from the GKE side. These are our these are our worker nodes. Okay, Google create one cluster in the back end. Sorry. Google will create one cluster in the backend, and all the uh, uh, control planes are fall under this cluster.
Okay.
Suppose this control plane is related to your GKE environment. This one, okay. This control plane is related to your GKE environment.
Mhm.
This is user control plane one. Okay.
Okay.
Over the GCP, multiple multiple customers are created the GKE cluster, normally creating GKE cluster on the daily basis, and uh, other customers control planes are also fall under this cluster, and it's totally depend upon the cluster capability or cluster resource availability. Okay, and we can name those control plane as a user control plane.
Okay. But it is for other customers.
Yeah, we can say that it is for other customer. Also, we can say that uh, uh, it is for our GKE clusters, control planes.
Okay.
Okay, but Google is managing those control planes over the cluster. Okay, and this cluster is managed by the Google. That's why we are not facing any downtime normally.
Yes.
Okay,
Not. Yeah. Understand. In normal, I have not faced till
yeah.
now.
But how Google is managing those clusters? Google created some admin cluster in the background. This suppose this is the Google admin cluster. Google admin cluster one. Google admin cluster managing our
On that admin
control
cluster.
plane managed clusters in the backend. Okay.
Okay. Kind of service. It's running kind like a service or microservice there.
Yes. Google created one admin cluster, and those admin clusters are created the users control plane clusters, user control plane. And those users control plane are fall uh,
Mm.
under the cluster. This cluster is managed by the Google, and we are creating a pool from our side, from GKE side, and that particular pool we can manage, we can increase, decrease, or we can apply the setting as per our requirement. But we cannot we cannot manage those users control planes. Those users control planes are managed by the Google.
Okay.
Okay, now if we are talking about the Anthos are providing same type of structure in on-prem environment. We have to create same type of structure in on-prem environment. Let's see. These are the admin clusters. Okay, the
Mm-hmm.
upper part. This is the admin cluster.
Okay.
Okay, in this admin cluster, we have available only single control plane nowadays. As of now, we don't have option for creating multiple control planes. Okay, we have a single control plane available, and we have a two minimum add-ons we have to configure at the time of creating the cluster. Minimum two, we can increase the number of these add-ons.
Okay.
Okay, add-ons will provide some other features like maintaining the logs or updating the logs over the GKE. And
Mm.
this admin control plane managing the user's control plane. And user's master control plane is act as a Kubernetes control plane. And workers, this is the user's worker node below two. Diagrams are showing the users worker nodes. These are showing as Kubernetes workers. Okay. If we are correlating this structure related to the Kubernetes, this is our Kubernetes control plane and this is our Kubernetes worker.
Yeah.
But if we are correlating this structure related to the GKE, this is the control plane which is managed by the admin control plane. Is it clear or do you
Yeah.
have any doubt?
No, I don't.
Okay. Here we have some minimum requirement. The minimum requirement is we cannot use RAM below 8 or CPU below 4 or
Mm-hmm.
minimum two add-ons need to be configured or need to be created under the environment or one control plane. Right now only one control plane is available in this structure. Okay.
Yes.
Let's see, suppose if any issue happen in the environment and this control plane is not available. In that particular scenario, our applications is running and our application is running over the worker nodes and there will be no impact over there.
Yeah.
Okay. And the another thing is that do you know about the satellite environment? How satellite is working and over the environment, over the Linux environment, and how satellite is managing the Linux nodes?
No, I don't. Satellite as a patch server or what?
Yeah, satellite is a patching server.
Yeah, that I know.
Okay, normally in any environment or in any organization purchases only single satellite server and there will be no fail tolerance. Okay, because the cost of the satellite server is very high and if in any condition, if satellite server goes down, then there will be no impact over the production environment or over the dev or test environment.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Same thing is happen over there. If admin cluster is not available, or uh, if we face any downtime for some hours or for some time, at that particular time, there will be no issue happen over the running applications.
Okay.
Okay, this is just for managing our users control plane, this part. This is managing over only this part.
Okay.
In this structure, we have only single master available, single users master control plane available. But in production environment, we can create multiple user master, and the creation of those multiple user clusters, we can control or we can do it through admin cluster. Okay. If
Okay.
our admin cluster is in down state, then we cannot create a new environment related to the user cluster. And another thing is that we are creating two load balancers. One load balancer, for one LB, we can say one LB is
Mhm.
for admin cluster only.
Okay.
Okay. Another LB we will create for user cluster. Suppose if we have to use three user cluster, then we have to create three separate LBs for all three user clusters. And
Okay.
all the traffic will move from these user LBs related to our applications, or related to admin cluster, or managing those admin clusters. All the traffic flow from the admin LB.
Okay. Okay. And this.
Okay, we have two different types of utility available. One is GKE CTL, which will manage this Anthos, or we can say the admin cluster. And another utility we have available in this environment is kubectl, and I hope you know about it.
Yeah.
It is managing for Kubernetes cluster.
Oh.
This
Okay.
is the structure of Anthos, high level structure of Anthos. If you have singled out, just tell me.
Not right.
Okay, can we
Mm.
proceed?
Yeah. Please.
Yeah. If any requirements come, or if any, we will discuss the low-level environment related to the Anthos, or related to the ASM, Anthos Service Mesh, config management, in separate videos. But now we are moving towards the installation of Anthos cluster. In on-prem environment, we have two different types of installation available. One is over the bare metal, and the second one is over the VM environment.
Okay.
Most of the scenarios, our all the environment is running over the VMware in most of
Okay.
the scenarios. That's why today we will create a cluster over the VM environment.
Mhm.
Okay, let me log in over the vCenter.
Mhm. Please.
Is it visible?
Yeah. It is. It is.
Yeah. First of all, I want to tell you that there will be no requirement for creating the servers manually for installing the Anthos cluster. Everything will be taken care by the Anthos, or the Anthos config management scripts, or we can say Anthos configuration scripts. Okay.
Mhm.
Uh, in that particular scenario, we just require the account which is created over the vCenter and having the sufficient permissions for
Okay.
creating the nodes. Normally, nowadays also, if any requirements come for creating the new environment, then we have to create a new service request for the VM team, and then VM team created a shell related to the machine, and then VM team hand over those shells to the Linux team, and then Linux team install operating system over there. But
Oh, okay.
here everything will be taken care by the configuration files. And let's see. In current scenario, I have only single node available. This is the Linux node, Debian node. Okay. First of all, we will log in over this Debian node and we will perform the action.
Okay.
Here, I want to tell you one more thing. Give me a second. I have to add one more thing. Here, this is the admin workstation. Let me tell you.
Yes.
This is
Control
the
plus.
admin workstation. Okay.
Yes.
This admin workstation will use as a jump node, or we can say booster node. We have to log in over there and then we have to manage all the environment.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. And in our scenario, as of now, I have available only this single VM, and this is not a admin workstation. This admin workstation. First of all, we will create this admin workstation. Then we will create a admin cluster. After that, we will create a user cluster.
Okay. So you will do the all the cluster EKS cluster installation as well.
It's not a EKS cluster. EKS cluster is only available over the Google environment.
Oh, sorry, I'm
Anthos
saying.
cluster.
Yeah.
Yeah, tell me. If you have any doubt, just tell me.
No, I'm saying I was saying the EKS for the AWS only. So yeah, GK. Yeah, I was supposed to say.
Okay. First of all, we have to download some scripts from the Google, and that
Mhm.
particular scripts will perform every action. That's why I'm going to create one directory so that we will perform the every task over there. Nothing is there right now.
Yes. Yes. No.
Do you know about the G shell or Cloud Shell, Google Cloud Shell?
I know about the AWS Cloud Shell, but
Okay,
not.
it's okay. Shells are used to manage the environment via CLI, right?
Yeah, yeah, it is. I know about the Cloud Shell in the
Okay,
AWS platform.
okay. Here we are performing the activity over the on-prem environment. That's why we have a servers available. If need to manage the Google Cloud environment, then we need a Google Cloud Shell. And normally Google Cloud Shell is available over the over the console, over the web page after login over the Google console. But we can use that particular utility over the Linux nodes also.
Mm.
We have to just install the gcloud utility package, and then the gcloud utility is available over the terminal. Here, that particular utility is already installed. That's why I'm just going to initiate the things. Sorry. Yeah. It will ask you to enter the verification code. After firing the command gcloud init, uh, I have to copy this URL over the browser.
Okay,
Okay,
yes.
and then I have to it will prompt for login over the browser, and then I have to provide my GCP credentials, and then it will create one verification code. You need to just copy this and hit over the browser, and every steps. Then you have to follow the steps.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to separately. Yes, I'll show you. Here I hit that particular URL over the browser, and now it is showing this. I have to allow it, and then code will be available. I have to just copy it and then paste it over there. What happened here? Something was wrong. Let me open a new console. I think this browser is not comfortable. I have to switch over the Google Chrome. Let me do that.
Mhm.
Hello.
Yes, means it is presenting. It is showing presenting, but it will come.
Okay. Now I put the verification code. Is it visible or still is it showing the presenting?
I think at my side there is an issue because I am still not able to see.
Okay. Let me represent it again. I will present you the specific tab only.
Okay, now it is.
Okay. Here I put the verification code, and after that I have two options. Either I have to choose the current project which is available under my organization, or I have to create a new project for creating this cluster or creating and registering this cluster. Okay. If I will choose any one of the option, then this cluster will be created under that particular project. But uh, I'm going to create new project here. Okay, just for to
Yeah,
describe
yeah.
you. The sixth number option is for create a new project. I have to supply the six. Okay. Now I have to write my project name in between 6 to 30, and the character will be small alphabet.
Okay.
Anthos cluster will be the project name. Now it's going to create a cluster project over there. Everything is completed. Here from the shell, I created the new project, but I have to attach the billing account manually over there
Okay. Through console.
through console. Yeah. Uh, Either we have to do via CLI, but I will prefer to do it via console over the separate window. Uh, till here, do you have any doubts?
No, I don't have. Understand everything.
Okay, let me do that via console. Console is showing very slow. Guys, due to some network issue, connection was disconnected, and I have to reestablish the connection with GKE. That's why I'm going to re-enter the gcloud init command. I'm going to reestablish the connection only. Previously, we created the test Anthos cluster project, which denoted over the fifth number. So I'm going to select it again, test Anthos cluster. Now I'm going to, here I export the project equal to my project name, sorry, project ID. After making a connection, we have to enable some services which is responsible for creating the cluster over the on-prem environment. These are the some services which mandated to make enable. It will take 1 or 2 minutes only. Yeah, it's done. Now we have to create a service account. We will use this service account to fetch the details from the to fetch the required information from the Google. Also, same service account is used to upload the logs over there. This service account will use to manage the Anthos cluster from the GKE. After that, we have to create the access key for the authentication. It's taking some time, I don't know why. Maybe having some network issue from my side. After performing these steps, I will change the network. Shit. I'm going to move the that particular key from my home directory to the admin-ws directory, which I created for creating the cluster. I'm going to there. Here, right now I'm in admin-ws. Here I have only single file available. Now I'm going to create. Now I'm going to provide the required permission to the created service account. Minimum, I have to provide three roles. I have to bind the three roles. One is for service use, another is one for IAM service account creator, and another one is IAM dot role viewer. These are the three roles which required for creating the cluster. Guys, steps are completed. Now I'm going to fire the VNC server command for enabling the graphical console. There is no requirement to perform this step in the production environment, and normally in the production environment we don't have VNC server available. Just skip this step in your environment. I am performing it because I have required it, and I have to perform some steps after the installation. That's why you can safely ignore it. Prerequisite has been completed. Now I'm moving towards for installing the admin workstation, which will act as our jump server or the Boston node for Anthos environment. For creating the workstation, first of all, I have to create a certificate via OpenSSL command, and that certificate is generated for making a for making a secure connectivity between Anthos environment over the VMware environment. This command will this command will create a certificate, and the name of the certificate file is uh, the extension of the certificate file is .pem. Now the requirement is to create. Now I have a requirement. Uh, Now I have to download the GS utility, GKEADM utility via gsutil command, and this will download the script file from the uh, Google storage, and that particular GKEADM script file will responsible for creating the whole environment. Let me find out the required version. We will use 1.8.4. The latest version will be available from the Anthos documentation. You can directly fetch the information from there for creating the Anthos over the latest version. After downloading it, I provided the execute permission. Now I'm going to create a configuration file. For creating the configuration file, we have to fire the command gkadm create config. This command will generate two files. One file is credential.yaml, which will carry the account information which is created over the vCenter, and that particular account having the permission for creating and managing the VM environment. And another one is admin config.yaml. This file we will use for creating the workstation node. And here we will not create the workstation node manually. GKADM will take care of everything else. Now I'm going to supply the credentials. You can see that credentials are updated over there. This is the username and this is the password for accessing the VM environment via CLI. Now I'm going to update the parameter for admin ws config file. Let me show you the updated details with you. Here it will use the key file which we created for GKE authentication. This is the IP address of the machine. This is the data center detail, GKE on-prem. This detail is data store from where it will fetch the storage. And this is the cluster name. This is the network VLAN name from where it will fetch the IP addresses. This is the admin workstation VM name, and VM will be having 4 CPU with 8 GB of RAM and 50 GB of hard drive. These types of information you have to define, and these types of information will vary as per the environment to environment. Normally, first of all, we are doing the discussion with the customers and then uh, uh, ask these types of information from the customer side, like IP address, what will be the IP address range, will it be a static IP or a dynamic IP? We have to define it accordingly over there. After modifying this, I'm going to in, I'm going to run a screen utility. This will help you to run the script in the background if there will be a network break happen. gkedm command we will use for creating the admin cluster. Right now I'm going to show you. Right now I don't have the admin workstation over there, and this command will create the workstation and then install the operating system over there. Here you can see that right now I have only two VMs are available. Let me fire this command gkadm create and then the admin workstation hyphen hyphen auto create service account. Now first of all it will validate all the things and then download the OS image for installing it over the shell after creating the VM shell over the ESXi environment. This command first of all will run the pre-flight check and then download an OVA image. After that create a SSH key and then create an admin workstation VM. After that it will install the Docker. Sometime we can face some error over there. Maybe some chances that we will face this error after completing this script, and feel free to ignore this error. If you are facing any another error or receive any another error, then you have to find out the logs. You have to read all the logs and take a necessary action as per the log information. If you receive this error, then you can feel free to ignore it. This error is also mentioned in the documentation that sometime we can face this error. Once it will complete, then we will move towards the admin cluster installation. In terms of admin cluster installation, first of all, we will create the load balancer and then we will create the admin cluster. You have to take care of one thing. Either we have to connect the admin cluster or a user cluster. First of all, we have to create a load balancer and then we have to create a required cluster, admin cluster or a workstation cluster. If we have a multiple user clusters available, then we have to create a dedicated load balancer for those clusters. If you are if you will create a single user cluster, then there will be a single dedicated load balancer for user cluster. If we will create a two user clusters, then there will be two load balancer for per user clusters. Let me pause the recording till the time it will update. Guys, now this command has been completed. Here you can see that the validation performed by this script. Here in OS image is installed, and here the admin workstation VM is created by this script automatically. and all the configuration which was available under the admin workstation.yaml, everything is taken care by the scripts, and environment has been created. Here it's showing that for connecting the admin workstation, this is the IP address, and here the SSH key is available, which we can use for connecting this environment without any username or password. Here you can see that three nodes are created, three nodes are available. Previously there was two nodes only, and this is the latest node which right now created by the script, and the node name is GKE admin workstation. This node having the 4 CPU, which was defined under the configuration file, with having the 8 GB of RAM. Same thing is also defined under the configuration file. Now I'm going to install the admin cluster. For installing the admin cluster, first of all, we have to log in over the admin workstation, which right now we created. I'm going to export some GOVC environment. We have a GOVC utility available. This utility is used for managing the VM environment via CLI. And this is our VM user, which having the permission for creating and managing the VM environment. And we will use this user for creating the directory over the data store. Now I'm going to create one directory over the data store. Over there, we will create the machines. This is the command which will create a directory over the data store under this data center over this data store, and this will be my directory name which will create it after this command. We will use this path under the admin configuration file. First of all, we will set our project. First of all, we will set the project. Under this project, we will register our GKE cluster. Here, I will tell you uh, after creating the workstation, these files are automatically available over there. These are the part of workstation creation. And the main important, we have two main important files which require and which need to modify for creating the admin cluster. This file is used for creating the admin cluster, admin-cluster.yaml. Also, we have a user cluster configuration file available there, which we will use for creating the user cluster. And one more important thing I want to tell you that in future, if any requirements for upgrading the cluster, then you need all these files. In that particular scenario, just make sure that just take a backup of these files and put these files over the secure place. If you don't have available, if you will not have these files, then you will not able to perform the cluster upgradation. These are the mandatory files which will require for performing the cluster upgradation. Now I'm going to update the admin cluster YAML. Here the kind is admin cluster, and this will be my vCenter uh, vCenter IP address, and this is my data center name. Here the credential.yaml is available, which we created over the last session. This path we created over the govc utility, and under this path we will create the vmdk file. Here I supply the DNS server name. After the DNS server name, I supply the NTP server name, and I provided the type DHCP. That's why I am not defining every IP address. You have a two different way for supplying the details. Either you have to use the DHCP or you have to use the static IP. If you are using the static IP, then you have to define all the IP details. If you are using the DHCP, just type equal to DHCP. This service CIDR will use under the cluster, and this is the pod CIDR range which we will use after creating this cluster. And all the environment, all the networking will come from this network. Here I define the load balancer details. In Anthos, we have three different types of load balancer are available. Uh, Google by default suggests for the CISO load balancer. If we are using the CISO load balancer, then we have to define two different types of IP for the load balancer. One, we can say that the virtual VIP, and another one is for IP for VM. For creating the CISO load balancer, Anthos will create one VM, and over the VM, it will upload some customized ISO image, and over there it will define the VIP. For base machine, for base CISO VM, we have to define the IP address in the another file. Here I supply the kind equal to CISO. If customer is using the F5 load balancer, then we have to define it accordingly for the F5. Otherwise, we have another option is available for manual LB. In that particular scenario, we have three different types of LBs are available: F5, CISO, and manual. And you have to define the details in this configuration file accordingly. And every information is available in this configuration file in uh, 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 in this format. You have to just uncomment your required format and need to supply the values over there. Here I define uh, the CISO host config YAML. Over there I will define the node name for the CISO, and I will define the IP address for the CISO. This will be my master IP with having 2 CPU and 3 GB of RAM. I have some limited resource are available, and that's why I define the anti-affinity group policy false. But in the production environment, we are using this feature. We are using anti-affinity group feature. So if you are creating the cluster in the production environment, then please make sure that it will be enabled. But in right now, I am disabling this feature. I define the auto repair feature uh, enable. I, right now, I'm going to create the host config file for CISO load balancer. This will be the net mask for CISO load balancer. This will be the gateway, and this will be the VM IP address, and machine will be available with this name, host name. Now I have to perform two actions. First of all, I have to check the configuration file. I have to check I have to check all the parameter and all the parameters are supplied in a correct format or not. I have to check it, and then I have to unpackage it, or we can say the pre-flight check. This command will take approx 4 5 minutes, or sometime it will take 5 to 10 minutes. So till that particular time, I will pause this video. And one more thing I want to tell you that this cursor will stuck in this format for next 1 or 2 minutes. Sometime it will stuck in this form in this stage for next 2 3 or 4 minutes. Then I'll suggest you just wait for the response. It will not goes under the hung condition. Sometime if anyone try to create a cluster first time, that particular time the engineer suppose that this command is not working or something goes wrong in the background, but you have to wait, and then it will show you the output or the result of the verification. Either it will show you some error and you have to fix that particular error as per the information or as per the log. It will suggest you over the terminal what goes wrong. You have to take appropriate action over there. Now I'm going to pause the video for next 5 to 6 minutes. It will take time. Guys, now configuration check has been completed and everything seems fine. Now I'm going to unpackage the GKE bundle by running the prepare command. And again, this command will also take a time, so I'm going to pause this video till the time it will complete. Prepare command has been completed. Now I'm going to install the screen utility to avoid any interruption due to network disconnectivity. As I told you that, first of all, we have to create the load balancer and then we have to create the admin cluster. Now I'm going to create a load balancer. It will read the configuration file and create the load balancer accordingly. Guys, here I have a 3 machines available. Once I'll be created, then I will having 4 virtual machines. I'm going to pause this video till the time it will create. Now it's going to create one LB VM and let's see how many VMs are there. Yeah, you can see that 4 VMs we have right now. Every VMs it will create automatically. And this is this VM for my CISO load balancer. Right now the host name is unknown because in the background it's going to configure the things over there. Once everything will be configured, then host name will be updated over there. Yeah, it's done. You can see that the host name is CISO VM. After creating the LB, I'm going to create a admin cluster. And pre-checks already completed, that's why I'm going to skip the validation. It will take time, that's why I'm going to pause the video and resume it once the cluster is created. Guys, now installation has been completed. Now we have an admin cluster available. Let me show you the VMs. Previously, above VMs are there. Now we have a GKE admin master, which is act as an admin control plane, and we have a 2 GKE admin add-on nodes. These are also created automatically. Now the last command created these 3 VMs. Right now we have total 7 VMs available. Let's see, am I able to connect with admin cluster or not? Right now, via this command, I am able to connect it via admin cluster. kubectl is a common Kubernetes command. Cluster info is for fetching the cluster related information. Hyphen hyphen cube config is a parameter for supplying the configuration file. We have to use a different configuration file for managing the different environment. Suppose if need to connect with the admin cluster, then need to connect with the admin config file. If you need to connect with a user cluster, then you require the user config file. If you have a multiple user clusters, then you will be available multiple users cluster configuration file, and you have to use the required configuration file for connecting to required user clusters. Let's see how many nodes are available. Right now, you can see that one admin cluster is available and two add-on nodes are available. Let's make a wide. These are the internal IP address and these are the external IP address. Both are the same, and these VMs are used for creating the clusters. Normally, we have three different types of operating system we can use. One is a COS, the second one is Ubuntu, and the third one is Windows Server. In Linux environment, we have two options are available in both ISOs, Ubuntu and OS. One is image with Docker or image with Containerd. These two options are available. If you need an image over the Containerd, then the tagging will be COS underscore Containerd or Ubuntu underscore Containerd. If you have to choose the image with Docker, then the tagging will be Ubuntu or COS. But I want to tell you that the Docker image will be deprecated soon, and Anthos is not providing the full support, or Docker images are not recommended for using in the production environment. If you have something dependency related to the application, then only you have to use it. Otherwise, I will recommend you to use the containerd images. And for the microservices, normally we are using the Linux environment. That's why in 95 or 99% cases, we will use either COS or either Ubuntu. If we will use the COS over there, we cannot use the XFS file system. If any requirements to use the XFS file system, then you have to choose the Ubuntu operating system, Ubuntu underscore containerd. After creating the admin cluster, now the time is for creating the user cluster. And as I told you that the user configuration file is automatically created by the script when admin workstation is created. We have to use this user cluster.yaml and we have to modify the entries as per the requirement. I have updated all the entries. The kind is user cluster for creating the user cluster, and remaining information may be same as per the admin cluster. Here I supply the DNS cluster, DNS server name, NTP server name, and I choose the type DHCP. As I told you that we have two options available. Either we can use the DHCP or static. In static, we have to define all the things manually. IP address and the node name. This will be the service CIDR and this will be the node CIDR. This will be the control plane VIP for user cluster and it will be a ingress VIP. Here I'm choosing the CISO load balancer for user cluster. It will create a CISO load balancer for user cluster, and we have two more options available. Either we can use manual or F5 load balancer as well. Master IP will be this, and it will create with 4 CPU and 3 GB of RAM. Sorry, it will create 4 CPU with 8 GB of RAM, and the replica will be 1. And the node pool or worker node replica is three. It will create a three nodes, and minimum we have require the three nodes. We cannot create one or two nodes. Also, we have at least define 8 GB of memory and four CPUs. We cannot define minimum these values. Otherwise, it will not create the cluster. Also, last time also I suggest you that you have to enable the anti-affinity group rule in the production environment. If you are creating the cluster for the production environment, then you have to enable it. But right now I am disabling it because I'm creating the cluster just for the testing purpose. Here I define the US central one. This project will create over there, and this will be my project ID in which the Anthos cluster will attach. After updating the configuration file, I have to create a file for CISO load balancer. As I told you that we have required a dedicated CISO load balancer for user cluster as well. This file is for this file I created for CISO load balancer, and this will be the machine IP, and this will be the machine node name. After performing these steps, I have to fire the command for checking the configuration file. It will check the syntax only. Once this command will complete, then we will proceed for creating the load balancer. After that, we will create the user cluster. And you have to make sure that uh, it's not make sure that basically it's a part of installation, and load balancer is mandatory to define. And first of all, you have to create the load balancer, and then only you can create either user cluster or admin cluster. At the time of performing the uh, uh, checks, that particular time it create some VMs, and these VMs will perform some actions in the background, and after completing the requirement, these VMs will automatically deleted. I'm going to pause the video till the time checks completed. Guys, now checks has been completed. Now I'm going to create a load balancer. gkctl create load balancer hyphen hyphen kube config file. Here I am using the admin cluster kube config file for creating the users clusters load balancer. And then you have to supply your user cluster configuration file. In this configuration file, LB information is available. Also, the host config file for load balancer is also available there. The path is available there. After creating the load balancer, I will configure the user cluster. Here you can see that the previous test VM is not available. Uh, Previously, it was created by the check config command. Check-config-dhcp. This VM was created automatically, and right now this is not available. These types of VM is created at the time of performing the checks for user cluster as well as the admin cluster. Right now you can see that I have a two CISO VMs are available. One is for admin cluster and another one is for user cluster. LB configuration has been completed. Now I'm going to create a user cluster via same gkctl command, and right now I'm creating a parameter create cluster, and the configuration file will be the same. Uh, we have to use the admin cluster configuration file, admin cluster kube config file, sorry. And then we have to supply the user cluster configuration file, which use as a unsure file for creating the environment, and we have to skip the validation. This command will take time. Till the time I'm going to pause the video. Guys, now user cluster is also installed. Let me show you the namespace available over the admin cluster. These two namespaces are for user clusters, and this is the namespace for Anthos uh, admin cluster, and main configuration ports are available under the cube system. Let me show you the ports running under the user cluster one. These are the number of ports which are running under the user cluster one NS. Right now I'm going to present you every information which is available under the admin node, under all the namespaces. Sorry. Get all hyphen A, all the namespaces. This will show you the details that these are the ports available under the kube system namespace over the admin cluster. These are over the uh, user cluster one name under the user cluster one namespace over the admin cluster. These are the services which are running over the admin cluster, and these are the deployment sets which are running over the admin cluster. These are the deployments which are running over the admin cluster, and these are the replica sets which are running over the admin cluster. Now guys, I want to show you all the details over the user cluster also. I replace the admin cluster kubeconfig file with user cluster kubeconfig file. Now it will show you all the details over the user cluster. These are the n number of pods which running over the user cluster. And these are the services which running over the user cluster. Now these are the daemon sets which running over the user cluster, and these are the deployments which running over the user cluster. These are the replica sets which running over the user cluster. Now I want to show you the node details under the user cluster. If you want to check the nodes over the user cluster, then you have to call the users cluster kubeconfig file. These are the three nodes which are running under the user cluster. Guys, after creating the admin and user cluster, I want to connect I want to connect my Anthos cluster with a GKE environment. For doing this, first of all, I have to fetch the token. Here it's showing some error, base 64 invalid input. In that particular scenario, I'm going to remove this option and I will decode the base 64 value over the internet. In that case, first of all, I will copy this value and open a website. You have to type the base 64 and choose the first website. Paste the value there and decode it. You have to copy this value and then you have to log in your GCP account and move under the Kubernetes cluster. This cluster I have created right now, and let me log in. You have these four options are available. I am logging it via token. If base 64 is working in your environment, then you have to copy the value. Otherwise, remove the base 64 from the command and copy this value, decode it from the browser, and then copy the value and put it under the token. Now let's try to log in. Or yeah, right now it's showing the status is green. This is my user cluster which created over the on-prem VM environment. These are the three nodes which are available there. Guys, you can see that here the workload information. Only 4 ports are running over there. Two is for IST/IO, one is GKE Connect and AIS. I'm going to duplicate session of the putty. Now going to copy the kubeconfig file from the admin workstation. I can use this kubeconfig file for accessing the user cluster environment. Let me export in this shell. After performing this step, no need to provide the kubeconfig file for user cluster in every command. I can fire the I'm going to fire the kubectl info, show you the cluster information. Now I'm going to deploy the Nginx. It's created. Let's see the port status. It's showing creating. Now the port status is showing running. Now I'm going to expose the Nginx. Let me do that. The service is exposed. Uh, guys, we have to let's see the service kubectl get svc. The external IP is this. Once we will curl, it will show the output. Curl and this. Yeah, it's showing welcome to Nginx. It's when it's working. And this deployment will show under this workload. Let's refresh it. This is the Nginx pod, which this is the Nginx pod, which I created over the on-prem environment, but details are showing under the GKE as well. Also, we can manage the workload from GKE as well as from the on-prem environment console. Let's deploy one more deployment. I'm going to deploy a Hello deployment over the on-prem environment. After that, we will try to create a deployment from GCP Marketplace as well. Let's check the ports. Yeah, Hello ports are there. Now going to expose the service via node pod. Now I'm going to uh, in create and apply ingress configuration file. Let's check the status of the ingress, and after a few seconds it will be accessible. And as this is the ingress and L7 load balancer, it will divert the traffic on the basis of path. Here I supply the path this, and it will show this value. If I will change this path, it will show me the different value. Yeah, you can see that. Previously it's showing this. Right now it's showing Hello Kubernetes only. Ingress IP is ending with 5, ISTI ingress, and we can access the workload via ingress IP as well. Either we can access it through this, or we can access it through this. I replace this value with IP address, and output will be same. Now I'm going to uh, first of all I'll show you this workload over the GKE. Here you can see that hello deployment is showing there, and the port details is 3 out of 3. Uh, in previous two scenarios, we set up the workload over the CLI from our data center. Now I'm going to set up the workload via marketplace. Just type here the marketplace. I'm going to deploy the WordPress. This is the estimated monthly price. To deploy it, need to click over the launch and need to enable the required APIs. Let me search the details again. Yeah, I'm going to deploy it under the let me re-verify the application name. Yeah, this is the application name. Pre This WordPress is without any cost, I think. Yeah, there will be no cost, but previous one was having some charges. That's why I dropped that particular option. For deploying the WordPress, you have to click over the configure, sorry, and then you have to supply the information over there. I'm choosing it over the user cluster one. The namespace will be default and the application name will be WordPress-1. Going to choose the standard and the size will be 5Z. Again going to choose the standard and the size will be 5Z. Click over the I accept and then deploy. It will deploy the application. Right now I deploy the WordPress application from the marketplace. An application will deploy over the on-prem Anthos cluster. Let's see the status from the cluster side. CTL get ports. It's going to create a WordPress application. These three ports will be deployed. One is completed and remaining two will be deployed. Yeah, it's working. Here it will not show any details. Now configuring the ingress to access the application. Here just see that service and ingress option, and here you can see the details. It will show the details over there. Thanks guys for watching this. Uh, let's see the workload details. Right now these are the workloads which running over there, and we can either delete the deployment or pods from the CLI, as well as we can delete it or manage it from the GKE console. Also, we can delete the WordPress from here as well. Just click over the delete and it will delete the application deployment. Here you can see that there will be here we don't have any WordPress deployment. Now we have only two deployments, Hello and Nginx. We can also delete it from the GKE console, and we deployed it from the CLI. Let's move towards the workload and select the Hello deployment and just click over the delete option. It will delete the Hello. Just move here. It's showing terminating, and now port will be deleted. Status is showing terminating. Also, we can delete the Nginx as well. It's showing terminating. Yeah, right now we don't have any ports. We don't have any ports under the default namespace. 3 deployments under GKE system and one is under Anthos Identity Service. Thanks guys for watching this. Just share your suggestion and I will make another videos as per the requirement. Bye bye, take care.